Hi, friends. So I was watching Shadowproof, and that was with with Kevin Gostola. He gives some weekly updates. His website is shadowproof.com, and he was talking about Julian Assange today and how Julian Assange is in Belmarsh prison, of course, and the COVID pandemic has really reached that prison and is in his section. And of course, Julian Assange, he's for anybody who hasn't heard of him, he's a publisher from WikiLeaks, and he has assisted in one case whistleblower Chelsea Manning, and he's been basically a political prisoner since 2010, I think it is, or 2011. And he's going to be extradited to the US if this kangaroo court in the UK has its way, which I think it probably will, I'm sad to say. And that may happen in January, and then we will probably never hear from Julian Assange again, and he will probably die in a special administrative measures prison in the United States, a maximum security, where he will never see another human being, because that's what special administrative measures are. And he'll probably want to kill himself if he doesn't kill himself after the whatever way it goes. If it goes the way of yes, he will be extradited, I wouldn't be surprised if Mr. Assange kills himself. Today I called once again. I've done this a number of times now. I've called Anthony Albanese, who is the opposition leader of the Labor Party, which is a major party in Australia, and as usual got a flat catcher response, probably a little bit better than the other responses that I've gotten over the years. I don't bother to call the government, the Scott Morrison government. They're a neoconservative government that does, as usual, just what the Labor Party does. They do whatever the US wants them to. And so I thought I'd just persist with the Labor Party, because there's a chance that they might be able to persuade the government, meaning the Scott Morrison government, but they don't have any interest in that. And I've said this over numerous videos, that they are just as bad as the Scott Morrison government when it comes to Julian Assange, or when it comes to any other issue where the US empire has told us here in Australia how we are to conduct ourselves in foreign policy, etc. As you can tell by the way we vilify China. We used to be quite fine with China, and they're our major trading partner and all of that, and now Australia is vilifying China. So it's a very sad state of affairs. But anyway, this is what's happening with Julian Assange. There is an increase in COVID now in the prison, and that is dire, because where is he going to go? And on top of that, Julian Assange had a friend in another cell who was a gay prisoner who was told that they were going to be returned to Brazil, and he killed himself. So I don't think they probably care one way or the other if Julian Assange has the ability to kill himself in his cell. It's just appalling, and I expressed my outrage at the office of Anthony Albanese today. Of course, they don't care, but that's all. That's one of the things I can do, is tell them how disgusted I am with them. The Australian Labor Party, the federal party, the Labor Party in the state here in Tasmania is not too bad. There's a few progressives there, but they're not the ones in control of this. But the federal Labor Party is just a disgrace. Very similar to the US Democratic Party in some ways, moving more and more to the right, because they make the excuse that every time they lose the election, it must be because they're not right, they're not centrist enough, or they're not right wing enough, or whatever. It's the typical nonsense that they know is nonsense, but they keep making that excuse. Anyway, so I'm going to share with you something via Kevin Gostola about the latest on Julian Assange and this COVID outbreak and all of that. Stay tuned.
This is an incredible story, but most people who are advocates for Julian Assange would likely tell you this is to be expected. And for a country that, unlike the United States, had groups that seemed to have the ear of government officials who were contemplating the need to release more prisoners, it seems rather unconscionable that we're seeing this play out in Britain. I think that you could almost hold them to a higher standard, because they claim to uphold human rights to a much greater extent than prisons in the United States, when their reputation usually seems to be better than the US, and yet in following this case with Julian Assange, I'm learning so much about how we probably shouldn't put it on a pedestal, their prison system. It seems to have just as many of the same issues. We hear stories of disrepair. Not long ago, the ventilation broke down, and Julian Assange was, I believe, freezing cold and dealing with the lack of any heating or something of that nature. And so now we see that the House Block 1 that is in Belmarsh security prison is going through a COVID-19 outbreak right now, and the worst spike that at least Europe and the United States and parts of North America are witnessing. Unfortunately, I don't have the greatest tab on what is going on in Asia and other parts of the globe. I assume that everyone's on very high alert when it comes to this virus, since it's become so intense in Europe and the United States. And right now, as this is happening, you've got Assange, who is being kept in this prison, again, denied bail, not allowed to be out on home confinement. There hasn't been a decision where he will be extradited. We're still waiting for January 4th for the decision to come. Has had this pandemic obstruct his ability to participate in his defense. That seems to be a feature of the way he's been held in confinement, something that has been to the benefit of the UK government so that they can continue to cooperate and allow the US government to bring him here for an unprecedented trial. And he is treated like a terrorist and not allowed to be out. And just because he sought political asylum in the Ecuador embassy, he remains in the Belmarsh prison. And that's what has been criminalized. So his partner, Stella Morris, is very concerned and told The Guardian, "I am extremely worried about Julian. Julian's doctors say that he is vulnerable to the effects of the virus. It's not just COVID, though. Every day that passes is a serious risk to Julian. Belmarsh is an extremely dangerous environment where murders and suicides are commonplace. Julian is one of the most widely recognized press freedom and government accountability advocates alive. UK decision makers must change course before they cause Julian to lose his life." There's been the National Journalists Union in England, I believe, who spoke up for Julian Assange's freedom. And we also talked about a very tragic story. It was either last week or a couple of weeks ago. I think it was a couple of weeks ago. We talked about his friend, who's a gay Brazilian who was afraid to be deported, Jair Bolsonaro's Brazil, and ended up committing suicide in his cell, and was someone who had become a friend of Julian Assange, and he lost that. And we had read and learned about that tragedy through Stella, and also through some of the reporting in The Guardian and other people who were speaking about it. And so this does not reflect well on the prison in the UK. These people should be released. Right now, under this crisis, there should, at the very least, temporarily, there should be home confinement for any of these individuals, whether they would be recarcerated after the pandemic. That would likely happen, but for right now, it seems pretty clear that the pandemic is being worsened by keeping these people in prison. And it's something that is well within the possibility of being done. There's so much paranoia about what Julian Assange would do, and we know that's why he remains in this pretty high security prison, because everyone thinks that the moment he sets foot outdoors, he's going to find an airplane and try to flee, and he won't face his trial. And so for that reason, it's possible that he could get an illness that potentially